seems like they're focusing on a bunch of guys that they probably shouldn't be focusing on anymore. You know, they don't have so many episodes left. What, 2 or 3 or something they have left of Hard Knocks? And you had a whole bunch of focus on Obina Eze, who's probably not going to make the team because every time they showed him, he was getting beat on the offensive line or he was doing something wrong. And then they also showed Leo Pimpleton from Central Michigan, and he did the juggling thing when he was up in front of the team. And then they showed him in the game action, and he's dropping touchdowns and dropping passes and stuff. So I can't imagine that either of these guys are making the team, which to me, I don't know. Like I want some focus on our star players. You know, like I want to see some of Jared Goff. I want to see some of DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, because we really haven't seen so many of those guys. We've seen more of St. Brown's dad than we have seen of the actual wide receiver on our team. And the only thing we've seen with DeAndre Swift is him out here getting yelled at. So it was disappointing to me, like from that standpoint. I don't know, man. I just want to see like our good players finally and see how they react and give me some Jameson Williams updates or something.
Yeah, no, I get that. You know, the Pimpleton stuff. I mean, look, it got me rooting for him, you know, when they were showing him in camp and, you know, that he was, you know, he looks like he's fast as hell. And, you know, he was trying to use that speed to his advantage. It's a shame he dropped those passes, especially that touchdown. And then Eze, I mean, you know, Eze was part of that 18-play drive to score the game-winning touchdown. So, you know, it looks like he did his job on that drive at least. But I get what you mean. I kind of understand what Hard Knocks is doing as far as showing the guys trying to make the team. There's I don't know, it's a more enjoyable story of guys we don't know, you know, fighting and trying to make their way into a very, very select fraternity of guys who have played in the NFL. Surprisingly, on the opposite side of that, you know, with a guy who's been performing while not being a named guy is Tom Kennedy. I didn't see any Kennedy whatsoever, except for obviously in the game, they highlighted his touchdowns. But in training camp and everything else, I didn't see him at all, which I was surprised about with how well he's performed through the first 2 preseason games. 100-plus yards in the first game, 2 touchdowns in the second. So that was surprising to me. I get where you're coming from. I think the reason for it is because we're not going to see these guys much. And so, you know, the guys that you are going to see, Jared Goff, I mean, look, Jared Goff's not even, you know, he's not really even a part of the show outside of a little bit of what they showed in the joint practice because his spot's secure. There's no question who the starting quarterback is for the Detroit Lions this year. It's Jared Goff. Blau and Boyle are obviously playing for the backup spot. They're not fighting Goff for his position. And so we don't see much of him. You know, we saw Swift in his conversations with Deuce Staley, but it's obvious who our number 1 running back is. It's Swift. And so there's not as much about him. There should be. I agree with you on that, especially a young player like Swift who is still trying to learn how to be a lead back in the NFL. You know, injury issues have played a part in it, but his performance as well has not been where Staley wants it to be. Obviously, you've seen how mad Staley gets at what he could be versus what he is, and he needs to believe that he can be this guy. So I get where you're coming from, but I think I see why HBO is doing it the way they are. But I, too, agree with you. I would like to see more from our guys that we're going to be seeing throughout the next, 4 months.
I still want to see some of the guys that have name recognition and guys that, you know, a national audience is going to know of. They're going to know of DeAndre Swift because he's probably going to go, you know, in like the second round of their fantasy drafts. And Jared Goff was the number 1 pick who made a Super Bowl, not with the Lions, with a different team, but he's still a well-known guy. We haven't really seen any of like TJ Hawkinson either. And the other thing I guess we can take away from this episode of Hard Knocks anyway is something I think every Lions fan should have known, but that Alex Anzalone is going to be definitely one of the starting linebackers. He was the linebacker who didn't play in the game because the linebacker coach, is it Kelvin Shepard, I think his name is, said no because Alex is making the team, and everyone else is like, yep, okay. And if you follow the Lions, that's something that you probably should have already known. But it seems like we got that confirmed.
One thing they keep hammering home is just how motivational Dan Campbell is. I mean, his speeches are just absolutely on point. Even when they go off on random tangents about getting the dust out of your pants or that last little bit that he's got to clean up and everything. But the way he goes about it, he says man way too often. Every sentence ends with the word man. But his speeches are absolutely on point. You know, they get you going, they crack me up, but you can see how much this man believes in what they are trying to build in Detroit. And it's just, every time I watch more of him, it reaffirms what I felt when they first chose him to be our head coach. I really want to root for this guy. I really want this guy to win, and I really hope this guy sticks around for a long time, because if he is sticking around for a long time, then it's hopefully not a Wayne Font situation where we're just okay, but a situation where we are now a competent NFL team and a team that is fighting year in and year out for the playoffs, for an NFC championship. He seems like he has it in a way that I haven't seen the Lions produce as far as a head coach in a really long time.
And him being a good head coach is still, up in the air, obviously, and it's probably not going to be determined for a couple years in the future. But he's super entertaining, and it seems like the guys like him at least. So now that he has the part down where the players can relate to him, it's all about, can he produce on the field? Can he manage a game? Can he manage the clock? Can he put the right people in charge of all the right things? And that is, kind of what's going to determine, of course, like it does for almost every coach, what's going to determine his success in the NFL and his success here in Detroit. Because the players obviously like him, and they resonate with him. They were even talking about on T.J. Hawkinson was on Bassin with the Boys podcast with the Taylor Lewan and Will Compton. And they essentially asked him, so you, since you've been in the league, all you've done is lose, but what's the difference between losing with Matt Patricia and losing with Dan Campbell? And he said with Dan Campbell, it was just different because the guys did trust him, and that Campbell was the same throughout the week. Where he said with Patricia, Patricia was cool outside of football, but then when he got in the locker room, the meeting room, whatever you want to say, he said, he tried to be Bill Belichick. He, completely switched up his personality. And with Campbell, that's just not the case, at least according to Hawkinson. And looking at the cameras, it doesn't seem like it'd be the case. And, seeing how Campbell conducts himself in press interviews and stuff. So it's a big difference between them, but it certainly seems like the players prefer this method.
Could you imagine this show with Matt Patricia still as the head coach of the Detroit Lions? I don't even know what I would expect to see outside of players just being despondent, having to listen to this fake head coach try and be a head coach and not know what the hell he's doing. I get it, Dan Campbell's still new and still young and he's still learning how to be a head coach, but there's just something about him, his vibe. Maybe it's because he was a former player and stuck around for so long and went right from playing into being under Bill Parcells and being under Sean Payton, where, you're talking about, one of the greatest coaches of all time in Parcells, and Payton, who did a pretty damn good job in New Orleans for the time that he was there. And then there's Matt Patricia, who was obviously the Belichick disciple that is just not Belichick. And I don't think it would be nearly, and I'm not talking about what Campbell has done that makes it entertaining, but the players themselves and how they respond to it. I think it would just be an absolute disaster watching this if Matt Patricia was still
You'd probably see Matt Patricia, yell at a lot of people. There's obviously that story that Darius Slay told on, excuse me, there's that story that Darius Slay told on First Take a year or two ago maybe, where he was going up against some top receiver, and Patricia basically told him stop, is probably the easiest way that we can say it here. And I feel like you just see a bunch of stuff like that. You probably actually see more ripping of the players, if you've already thought you've seen a lot with Deuce Staley, I think you would even got more of that with Matt Patricia.